Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality in a way that is extremely empowering. Speaking of exploring powerful perspectives, I'm super excited to announce the release of my very first book, The Golden Key: Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. If you're ready to alchemize the circumstances in your life so that your abundance expands to an entirely new level in 2021, head over to goldenkey.gift to download the audio or ebook as my gift to you by using the code POSITIVEHEAD. All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, after many years since his last appearance, I'm very excited to have my good friend Robin Tala back here with me on the show. Tala is a climate activist, spoken word poet, empowerment coach, and crown leader with Purium who resides in Maui. He's not only been a guest on this podcast going all the way back to 2018, but he also shared one of his poems on an episode of Optimistic. Super thrilled to have you again. Hello, Tala. Welcome back, buddy.
Hey, Brandon. How's it going?
So good. So good. And I was excited that you reached out and suggested like, hey, we're overdue. We got some things to talk about in regards to maintaining an elevated vibration specifically. And before we go into that, I want to ask my opening question, which I think in 2018, I still did my cliche opener and closer. So I always like when I have someone back on, like see if their answer changed. So here's a question. You probably don't even remember it if I did ask it to you. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You got 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
I am here to create connection, inspiration, love, justice, and equality on this planet. I'm here to make this planet a better place for all beings, humans and non-human, and to just bring as much joy and beauty into this world as possible.
Bam. And so it is. Well, so yeah, as I mentioned, one of the reasons we wanted to, it felt like the right time to bring you back on. You're one of our guides on doing a juicy solstice group cleanse in June. That we'll get into the details of a little bit later. But, originally you came on because I started aligning with Purium, superfood products that you're very active in getting out to the world. And I got to say, I'm so grateful to you for doing that back then, because it is the only thing that I don't think there's ever been something I've stuck with more consistently as far as what I ingest into my body. Literally I had my Purium shake today. I'm like so addicted, and everyone I make it for, they get on the same, like my friend that just moved in, I make her one most mornings. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I crave it every day now." And it's been like, it's so cool to, for something to stick. There's a lot of times where it's just like, trend, weight loss, whatever it is. And, the food is, of course, Dave and Amy, both the co-founders, have been on the show as well at different times, back then, several years ago. And, I think you said it to me, you can see the ripple of the heart, the intention of Purium. Dave is such a great example living in, I'm assuming he still lives in like a converted barn in the middle of nowhere. He runs this huge company, and it's like he cries talking about healing the world with superfoods, and you can feel it. It's like it's the intention in it all. And so, yeah, I just want to, bring that conversation is always such an important piece when we talk about maintaining an elevated vibration on the show. What are we putting into our body? What is the connection between spirit and body? And of course, that's your whole world. And so, yeah, it felt like a good time to bring you back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just love hearing this feedback from you that that this plant medicine, these allies, these phytonutrients are so integral, so high quality, top shelf, that there's something that your body craves, and that your new roommate who you're introducing to them to craves. It's amazing when we give our bodies regular, high quality, living, raw green juice and super bioavailable amino acids, like how we respond, not just on a physiological level, but how our energy upgrades, how we're able to maintain our boundaries more, with more integrity and more clarity, how our aura just shines. I have people walk up to me and just say, the whites of your eyes are so bright. Like, how do you do that? And I don't even notice. I'm like, okay, great. It's still working. So I'm so glad you've had an amazing experience. I also have been using these incredible, it sometimes feels even a little silly to call them quote unquote products, but these plant allies, for going on 6 years now. And I love them so much. And that's why I'm really excited to do what we do every once in a while and launch a brand new group cleanse. So it'll be happening online. And we will be taking a 30-day journey with these superfoods to cleanse glyphosate from our lower gut, to flood our body with living green foods and amino acids, to lower, just to detox and to revitalize the whole system. And alongside with the nutritional program, we're offering guidance, sound healing, and astrology, and manifestation techniques, and maybe some gene keys and some product science. And so for anyone out there listening, we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but you can go to juicycleansecollective.com. You can also go to positivehead.com/transformation and to order the products that you'll need to follow along with us. And we would love to invite you to join us for that.
Yeah. And just since we're throwing it out there right up at the front, and then people, in order to sign up, they would just use code positivehead on juicycleansecollective.com as well.
Yeah, that's right. When they order the cleanse, they're going to the Ultimate Lifestyle Transformation or the Core 4. They're two different packages, two different price points. If you want to go all the way, you go for the Ultimate Lifestyle Transformation. That's a full deep dive immersion. But if you're feeling like, oh, things are a little tight right now, but I do want to still do this, the daily Core 4 nutrition package is also a great way to go. And they would use the code positivehead at checkout to get 25% off of that package.
Cool. Yeah. And like I said, I've never felt better about, promoting anything. For me, it truly is just, it has become over the 2.5, 3 years or whatever it's been. It's a daily, I maybe miss on the weekends sometime, but literally I get up, I'm such a routine based person. And, I do have bulletproof coffee in the morning. That's the first thing. But 3 hours later, you can guarantee I'm in there with my own little, Purium Power Shake concoction, along with the Spectrum Greens, which when I talked to Dave, the founder, he's like, that's his favorite product. And it's just like, I love the fact that it's these, essentially there's no heat applied on any of the products. So like the Spectrum Greens, it's like 30 greens, all organic, no heat is applied. So most of the nutritional value is in there. But when you mix it together, like, especially with my little recipe, which by the way, I'd be happy to share with anyone who, if you write me, Brandon at positivehead.com, because, I've kind of over the years come up with my own little recipe that people like ooh and ah over every time that I serve it to someone. But it's so good. And I feel the difference. And so I'd like to go into...
Well, just really quick, before we move on, I just have to highlight something that you just said that is so unique that I really like. I like to let this sink in. Every other greens powder on the market that you will find, they use heat to dehydrate it. Now think about juicing some kale and some broccoli and some spinach and all the good things, some spirulina and chlorella, and then put it in the oven and bake it. Does that sound like a good idea? No. Right. Does not sound like a good idea. So, but when you're running a major company that's making products for lots of grocery stores, you got to think about like, oh, well, we need to get this huge amount of product dried. So we got to use this heat. Well, Dave Sandoval and Purium, they said, no, Sorry, no. And they created these wind silos where they are misting the fresh juice from the top of the silo and using a fan, a high-powered fan at room temperature air to actually evaporate all of the moisture, and you're left with a living and raw powder that has never had heat to introduce to it. And when you add water again to this powder, it is living and raw. You're getting 99% of what you would get if you were juicing fresh every day, cleaning your juicer, all the work that takes. And this is one of the reasons that there's a really big difference between, these particular superfoods. So I would like your recipe first and foremost. And I also have some other recipes too. Anyone who orders this month, we're including some special samples in our home compostable packaging. The company is that committed to earth stewardship, which we're about to start talking about. Home compostable packaging Terra pouches, you're going to get free samples of the cocoa hydrate and the aloe digest, which are really good to mix with the power shake as well.
Cool. Love it. Love it. We can trade recipes. Yeah. So let's dive in and let's talk a little bit about, why this is so important. Because of course the show is so much focused on perspective and mental activity. We definitely talk less about like working out and physical stuff like yoga and, meditation, of course, is talked about a lot, but that physical aspect is so important. And then what are we putting in our physical vessel and the spiritual connection between the health of the gut microbiome and the health of, us as humans. I know you have a lot to say about that, so love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all plants have intelligence. We humans have been coexisting and co-evolving with plants on this planet for millions of years. And it's a relationship that we have. And you can feel it when you go out into the forest or to a beautiful nature place. You can feel that energetic connection. And so we know that on a spiritual level. But then we humans, of course, we survive by eating, right? And the majority of our food is plants. And if we are choosing to eat animals, those animals have eaten plants. We are essentially converting the energy of the sun into nutrient form that sustains us. We are eating sunlight every time we are eating through plants. And so, it's really important that, especially those of us who are focused on evolving spiritually and mentally and emotionally, oftentimes we discount the physiological makeup, the well-being of our bodies, and the fact is that can be a limit that can stop you in your evolution if you are struggling with health or if you're experiencing toxicity. I mean, 50% of serotonin, which is the happiness hormone, is created in the gut microbiome.
Wow.
And so if we have a compromised lower gut, which environmental pesticides like glyphosate, Monsanto's glyphosate from Roundup, which are just saturating our world right now and compromising our lower gut. If we're not producing enough serotonin, we're not happy. It's harder to become happy. Even if we're doing all this spiritual work, all this mental work, it's harder to get to that place or to maintain it. So I, early on, saw this in the spiritual community and really decided that I needed to be an advocate and someone who was building that bridge between physical health and well-being and the spiritual evolution in our minds and our hearts.
Yeah. Wow. 50% of it's really interesting how we're now realizing that, we really have like three brains, right? We have the one we know of in the head, intelligence center. Then you have the heart, which is actually sending twice as many signals to the brain as the brain is to the heart. And then you have, now you heard about that for a while. Now you're hearing, hold on, maybe the most important one is the gut. And I heard it said recently that death begins in the gut. It's like everything that is like your core, and you have all this, all these different bacteria and things in the gut, right? We know probiotics and whatever. It's like these critters are literally like controlling us to some degree, right? It's like this, it's interesting. I don't think a lot of us have considered that we're actually like a composite being in a sense.
We are an ecosystem.
Yeah. Wow. What a fucking boom. Like, isn't that a trip?
It's amazing. And the gut is where so much of our being resides. It's called our second brain. It's where our immune system is. Hello, we're all thinking about immunity right now, and of course there are lots of different solutions to this situation we're in on our planet. But let's talk about the lower gut microbiome in terms of immunity. So many of us are compromised. I mean, so I mentioned Monsanto's glyphosate. So this is a pesticide that's found in Roundup, which criminally you can still find on the shelves of any garden and home improvement store.
Yep.
And glyphosate is an active pesticide in Roundup, and it is the most widely used pesticide on planet Earth. And there are literally billions of gallons dumped into the water table because with this pesticide, they don't spray it on plants. You have to feed it through the water. So they put it in the water, it goes into the plants. And then what it does is it actually breaks down the immune system of insects. Well, guess what? It's also breaking down the immune system of humans. And because it's introduced through the water, it spreads everywhere. So even if you have organic farms, they're sharing the same water, under the ground. And when it gets into the water table, so we found that glyphosate, the proverbial, they have found that glyphosate, has been found in pretty much all food, including organic food. And it absolutely ravages that ecosystem, the beneficial bacteria, the ecosystem that we are. And so Purium worked very hard to develop a product called Biome Medic, which is the only product in the world which has been shown to remove up to 75% of glyphosate from the lower gut and reheal the damage done. So it shrinks the holes back down, because our gut is like a porous texture, right? Like all biology, we're not like hard. It's got tiny holes. But what we're seeing in modern culture is that those holes, because of environmental pesticides and toxins, are being stretched out way bigger than they need to, and letting undigested food material into the bloodstream, which leads to conditions called leaky gut or autoimmune, things like that. So this product goes in and shrinks those holes back down. It regrows the beautiful little hairs, like a little grassy meadow in your gut called the villi and microvilli, which are responsible for absorbing nutrients into your body. So even if you're eating them, you need to absorb them. It just completely reheals the lower gut microbiome environment, and therefore strengthens our immunity and our happiness and our cognition. It's our second brain. It's where a huge amount of our thoughts occur, actually not in your head. But we always say, I've got a gut feeling, right? We're talking about our gut. It's right there. So we must, if we are on a path to spiritual evolution, if we're evolving our consciousness, we must be paying attention to our gut health as well.
It's really interesting to see how all these like sort of spiritual things, I always talk about how, science and spirituality, physics, they're doing such a dance right now where they're mirroring each other in different ways. So when you said that, I instantly thought just a few Soul Share episodes back, maybe 2 months ago, I had a woman on, and her specialty, I believe her name was Erin Claire Jones, if I'm recalling off the top of my head. Hopefully I'm not confusing it. I think that's the person. And she's a specialist with human design. I don't know if you're familiar with human design.
I am. Yeah.
What is your human design? Do you know?
I'm a 6'2" manifesting generator. Okay.
Gotcha. I think I was 6'4" generator. And as a generator, we're supposed to listen to our gut. That's like the thing. Listen to your gut. Your gut has the answer. And so it's really interesting to see, here's this very sort of spiritual centric, this guy like downloaded this information supposedly and sort of channeled material, and how it plays into, a lot of these very science-based like stuff, it's really cool. So yeah, as we kind of explore what I would like to do, my aim for this episode is to really, I know you, and I know how obviously, everyone can hear how well-spoken and intelligent you are. And you've went 6 years down this rabbit hole. And I know in the last few years since we had you on talking about this in detail, you've probably learned some new things, come up with some new perspectives, on health and wellness. And so I'm just curious. I'd love to get sort of the cliff notes or whatever comes to mind when I ask you, hey, what are some new thoughts, realization, shares that you would have that just to help, inform the audience and inspire the audience?
You know, I the more I explore myself and the world, the more that I discover how interconnected everything is.
Hmm.
And I have, I think, like a lot of us, a deep sense of dread about the impending climate crisis.
Hmm.
I am a climate refugee myself, actually. I left Northern California because I had a few too many fire seasons that just were taking a toll on
Hmm.
my nervous system. I have the extreme privilege to be able to have created an online income for myself with Purium, actually, to be able to move to Maui, Hawaii, which is an incredible place, and also a place that may not be untouched like all places in the world by climate change. But for now, it felt safer than the wildfires of Northern California. But as I've explored, the climate crisis, which seems like this huge thing, like it is so massive, and how can we even make a difference? It's easy to feel small. Well, what I know from my work in the world, from my work inside of myself, is that every single thought makes a difference. Every single human makes a difference. It's every
Hmm.
drop of water that makes up the ocean. So
Hmm.
what I know is that when I go into nature, whether it's the redwoods in Santa Cruz, or whether it's the jungle out in Kipahulu here in Maui, or whether it's my native hardwood forests of southern Indiana where I grew up, I know that when I get into nature, I feel a profound sense of love and hope and connection. And I want that for everyone. I want that for the indigenous people in the Amazon rainforest, for them to continue living their traditional ways of life. I want that for the snails in the Indiana woods,
Hmm.
so that they can, their delicate ecosystem of water, that needs to be unpolluted for them to live. The frogs, the snails, I want them to be happy. The whales here in Maui, they need the ocean to stay within a certain temperature, and we're seeing the oceans heat up. We may be seeing declines of whales. I cannot stand by and let this happen without doing something. So that's my motivation. So then I come to this place. Well, what do I do, right? And I think this is where a lot of us come to. What do we do? And the truth is that it's a lot of little things that we can do to make a difference. And I could, have a whole show. And actually, I have a WhatsApp group that I've created just of a few friends who want to engage in everyday small little actions for climate solutions, so we can keep making a difference. So you can find that on my link tree through my Instagram. But I could do a whole show talking about the various things we can do. But to tie it back to what we're talking about right now, is that what I realize is that the agricultural industry is a huge contributor to carbon emissions in the climate crisis, and the weakening of our ecosystems, and the furthering of the extinction event that's happening right now on our planet. And so agriculture is greatly influenced by us, by people, it is completely created by us, and it is sustained by what we choose to eat. So probably a lot of people listening to this show are like, well, I go to my farmer's market, and, I only buy organic from like maybe Whole Foods or something like that. And that's great. Awesome. Keep doing that. And we all slip. We all, go out to that restaurant with friends that might not be organic, or we all get hungry on the way home and grab that burrito that might not be organic.
Hmm.
And when we do that, all of these little things are contributing to the factory farming industry, which is releasing huge amounts of the greenhouse gases, which is leading to the very ecosystems that we know, love, and enjoy in our little corner of the world being less and less protected. And so when we can ourselves commit to a larger portion of our diet coming from plant-based sources, especially organic plant-based sources, and when we can help other people do that, then if all of us, have 1 pound less of meat or of dairy or of non-organic food every single week or every single month in our diet, then think about it. That's going to be, let's say it's a month, that's going to be 12 pounds less a year for you. If 100 of your friends do it, that's 1,200 less. If 1,000 people, you scale it up, and it makes a big, big, big difference. So when we are turning towards exploring what we can do personally to increase the ratio of our diet that is plant-based, and then sharing that story as we do naturally with the people around us, we're making a big difference. And I think that's a really fundamental piece that I keep deepening into, is actually the sacred activism of doing something like sharing Purium products. On the outside, you're like, wait, what? But that actually has become one of the most, I think, potent and tangible things that I am doing to protect our planet in my life.
Yeah, I love that. It's, a lot of times I think people feel so overwhelmed and disempowered, and like, what difference can I make? And what I love is if as I talk about in my new book, The Golden Key, we are the lead actor, actress, director, writer in our own private YO universe. And so when you start to look at your life through that lens, it's like, okay, it's kind of like the Truman Show a little bit, where it's like, hold on, like I'm the lead in this, and everything's a prop in my movie. And everyone out there, I believe, and look at it through that lens, is a prop in my movie, and vice versa. I'm a prop in theirs. They created me in the image. I'm an extension of their consciousness, appearing in the way that I do in their lives. And so then it starts to get really interesting, because you think, okay, well, hold on, maybe I have more power to affect change than I think. What if from this moment forward, there is infinite timelines that I actually navigate in and out of with my own personal vibration? So, you almost think of it like ships passing in the night. Like, let's say me and you were here, and I'm right now saying the future is bright. We're going to get this climate change thing under control. I'm giving all my energy to that. I'm optimistic about it. I'm doing the little things that I can, and so are the people around me. And let's say you were the exact opposite in this scenario, like, no, it's all going to hell in a handbasket. It's awful. And, I truly believe, Tala, that, that we have the ability, and Bashar talks a lot about this. We're like literally jumping timelines with our vibration constantly, where you and I may have that conversation now, hypothetically. And then if you stayed one course and I stayed the other, a year down the road or 10 years down the road, you're in a totally different timeline than you were with the me that's sitting here and now. And maybe you have went into that really darker timeline, and I went into the one where we're healing it. And in that timeline that you went into, and I made you the bad guy in this, in case you didn't notice. And there would be a Brandon there who had also been less optimistic, so I still was there, but it's really a different version of me. And this gets a little out there with some of the, the concepts.
Another way to look at it too is just that we choose our life experience. Like, what do we want to be focusing on? And like, I know in some of the new age communities out there, there's a culture around conspiracy theories, and it's and that word is loaded, and there's a lot of different things included, some of which are probably more fact-based, some of which are probably less, but the point is that, like, what reality do you want to live in? Like, what do you want to be thinking about? Like, do you want to spend your time thinking about a lot of like dark and fearful things? Like, because that's going to influence the way you feel. So when you're talking about timelines, it's like, yeah, if you get that timeline philosophy, go with that. But another way to say it is just like, what are you choosing to saturate? What thoughts are you choosing to saturate your mind in? What feelings are you choosing to saturate your heart in? And knowing that you can, and we can, navigate challenging topics with positivity and love. That when I talk about the climate crisis, it's okay to be afraid. I'm afraid. That's okay. Fear is not something that needs to be always run from. Like, if you're standing on the beach with your little child, and your 2-year-old kid is right at the edge of the beach and there's a big wave coming, your fear is going to motivate you to go get your kid and bring them back. That's healthy, so, but our fear can motivate us to act out of love. And I think that is the point here. And so that brings me to a quote that I would really love to share.
Yeah, please.
This is a quote that I frequently come back to when I'm, wrestling with these ideas. And it comes from someone who I mentioned earlier, Andrew Harvey. It comes from the book, The Hope, A Guide to Sacred Activism. So he says, quote, "A spirituality that is only private and self-absorbed, one devoid of an authentic political and social consciousness, does little to halt the suicidal juggernaut of history. On the other hand, an activism that is not purified by profound spiritual and psychological self-awareness and rooted in divine truth, wisdom, and compassion will only perpetuate the problem it's trying to solve, however righteous its intentions. When, however, the deepest and most grounded spiritual vision is married to a practical and pragmatic drive to transform all existing political, economic, and social institutions, a holy force, the power of wisdom and love in action, is born. This force I define as sacred activism."
Beautiful. Love that. Yeah, something that came up when you were talking about fear, you mentioned gene keys earlier as part of the one of the things that may be looked at during the group cleanse. And I love all the things that are ancillary that are being pulled into it, from the astrology and gene keys. Richard Rudd, I had on the show a while back, and he who wrote Gene Keys, and his story is fascinating and how that whole thing came to him. He shares on that episode of Positive Head. But one of the things he said that I really love, he said, fear is safe. And I really liked that because, that really at the end of the day becomes, and it touches on what you were talking about with a lot of the conspiracy stuff as well. Like, you get roped into fear, right? A lot. And there's a healthy level of fear that actually is informative and helping you to navigate, challenging situations. It's kind of like the ego. It's when it's in its right place, it's useful to navigate the 3D reality. When it gets out of balance and it takes over, then it gets problematic. And it's steering the ship and it's not meant to. And I think that's very much the same with a healthy sense of fear, knowing that, fear is indeed safe and can be super useful. And this sort of idea of, the only thing to fear is, what was it? JFK said the only thing to fear is fear itself. And who was it that I heard say? I think it was Tony Robbins said the only thing to fear is the fear of fear. So we can get so caught up in all of, and we really see that with the conspiracy stuff a lot, where, it gets just down a rabbit hole, and it's really infiltrated a lot of the spiritual community in a way too. I haven't talked a lot about that on the show, but I know that's something that I've seen you voice, your concern with it. And so I think it's very important to see what you're, to see what you're for and be for that, as opposed to, they asked Mother Teresa to march against the war in Vietnam, this big 1 million man march or whatever. She said, I'll never do that, but have a march for peace and I'll be there. And so I think she understood how important it is. You can be aware of these things, and maybe they're right, maybe they're theories, maybe they're, some truer than others, like you said, but where are you putting your energy? Being for bringing healing to the body, our personal body and the extension thereof, all the rest of the planet and ecosystem, right?
Absolutely. It comes back to purifying your reality, being the conductor of your experience in life. And when it comes to misinformation online, it's hard to tell what to think, right? But when we always come back to what's happening with us right here, then I think we get we create a more stable foundation to assess the other questions that we have about the world. And that's what I've seen over and over in myself too, is just when I'm feeling sort of antsy or sad or just anxious or, anything, if I pay attention to what I am, what's happening with my body, how am I breathing? What am I eating? Do I have enough water? and actually tune in with calming the nervous system, then the rest of my reality syncs up to that vibration. And I've learned that no matter whether I agree or disagree with people, because we're all complex beings and we have all sorts of thoughts about all sorts of things. I have so many good friends who we agree on almost everything, but we might disagree on certain topics, and I believe right now in our world, it's really important to practice the learned and practice skills of civil discourse, of not just polarizing and casting people out, of your circle or society just because there's, a misunderstanding or a disagreement, or, provided it's not egregious, with some kind of abuse or something like that. But,
Right.
but when I can drop into my own health, mental, physical, emotional, financial health, in a way that calms my nervous system, then all of those relationships become easier to navigate and hence create more peace in my life and in the world.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's really interesting to see the extreme polarization that's happening. How much, it's kind of like the throes of, I talk about him in my book that I'm sure you've heard, the journey of the caterpillar to the butterfly, and how, metaphorically speaking, I think we're emerging from the COVID chrysalis, and, and that can be, that journey for the caterpillar. It's a messy one, right? If you were to look at any given time when the caterpillar is melted down into the goo, and, it's like that, things don't look so good, but it's actually part of the process. And I think part of our process now is like these extremes of separation and so forth are meant to sort of really, be expressed. And the best thing that we can do is what you were just saying, I don't need to agree with you to still love you. And we can have a difference of perspective and opinion, and that's okay, instead of, all the anger and hostility that can come from, from taking a different perspective and determining it's the only way and everyone else is an asshole.
Yeah, especially on social media. I was listening to Radiolab and they did this episode on social media, and they were talking about imagine if the comment that you're typing on social media, instead of it being a comment you're typing, you're in a room of 100 people that and you're standing up on a chair and shouting, "Would you say what you're about to type?"
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally.
Maybe not. It's so interesting because when we're interacting online, we're isolated. We're in a personal space. We don't feel that we're in a group of people. We are in our room with no one there. We feel we are in private, but we're actually interacting in one of the most public commons that exists in our culture. And so for me, if I have a spirituality or religion, it's kindness. And no matter what I do, because I do it, me, I will stand up and speak my opinion. I will fight for what I think is right, but I will always do it with kindness. And I will always make a practice out of, before I speak to someone that I may disagree with, I get in touch with their humanity. I realize that this person has love in their heart and they are coming from an experience that is different than my experience. And I want to connect with them by having this challenging conversation. So how can I speak and show up energetically in a way that conveys my care while also tackling the issue?
Yeah. And when you can understand that, everyone's acting rationally based off their view of the world. And so it's and even view it as a challenge to, one of the things that I've started to do when I come across someone who is just, especially when I can justify how wrong they are, in the past, it's always, so much of my journey has been like, oh my gosh, how absurd this person's perspective or stance or the way let me show them how wrong they are, and then you start to get to, maybe that's not the game. Maybe the game isn't to show them how wrong they are, but to see how gracefully I can navigate, in the face of something that, would have in the past triggered me like crazy, and it's something actually I learned a lot from my son with, honestly. I mean, I just watch him navigate when he's opposing opinions with people or whatever, and how graceful he is. And I'd see him at like 18 years old, 17 years old, navigating in a way that just like blows me out of the water with my need to be right. And so it really, I learned from him in that. So I think that's really something that's really helped with my own growth. Is like, okay, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? Do you want to, because a lot of times especially if you're pointing out how wrong someone is, you instantly put them on the defensive. And then now you can't build that bridge. So I think what you just said makes so much sense is, let me get in touch with their humanity. And especially if their humanity looks and feels maybe a little more foreign to me than, someone who's just like me.
Yeah, well, one thing that we see throughout history is that anytime there's been extreme conflict and anything leading up to and including genocide in the world, is that the perpetrator of the violence always uses dehumanization in order to justify violence. And that means, and I say this with all love of all animals, but this is something that Brene Brown talks about in her book, Braving the Wilderness, which is all about belonging and the power of belonging, is that a really effective way to justify violence to everyday people typically do not like violence and will stand against it, is to liken certain groups of people to animals. To say they're pigs or they're rats or and we saw this in the Holocaust. We've seen it in many different genocides. And we start to see that, in He Who Shall Not Be Named, who is at the helm of our country for, the last 4 years, was constantly doing that, calling people pigs and rats and just dehumanizing language. And so we must also then, of course, when we see egregious behavior from others, we must look within and also make a discipline out of not using those same tactics ourselves, even when we are triggered, when we disagree so vehemently. We must put kindness first and foremost, so we don't perpetuate the very, disharmonious and often leading to violent dynamics that we abhor so strongly in the world.
Yeah, well said. Well said. One of the things before we got on here today, I had asked you an email. Hey, is there a couple key things that you would want to be sure to cover? And one of the things that you wrote down is just a possibility that I instantly triggered my curiosity. Was you wrote that all plants have intelligence, the Chlorella Spirulina story, and I'm like, I don't know the Chlorella Spirulina story. Like, yeah, I want to hear that. So, yeah, tell me.
Perfect. Yes, I love this story so much. So this is actually a story of an elder that I was sitting with, and this elder is actually Dave Sandoval, the owner of Purium. And you mentioned that he lives out in this beautiful place near Lake Isabella in Southern California, near Sequoia National Park, and he protected actually a natural spring there. There's a place, it's high desert, there are Joshua trees, it's very sandy, rocky environment, but there's this place there where there's 120 springs that just bubble out of the ground and start a tributary of the Kern River. And the land went up for sale and a water bottling company was going to buy it. And Dave Sandoval said, no, sorry, this is a sacred ground. This is where all the animals in the area come to drink. And this was a sacred place for the native people, as all springs are. So he bought the land out from under them and decided to protect it. And so he has a retreat center there where he has thrown events. And so anyway, I was out there at his place, is where he lives. And we were sitting around the campfire. It's got a beautiful campfire circle there, and sitting around the fire, just the two of us. And I was just musing. This was right when I was getting into Purium, and I was just musing. Oh, isn't it amazing how how we're using these plants to heal people? And he looked at me and he said, it is amazing, but let me tell you something. All plants have intelligence. And, you know, we see this with psychedelic plants. You know, we see people going into ayahuasca ceremonies or peyote, and it's very easy to recognize the intelligence of those plants because they make their presence known in a very real way, you know, slap you upside the head. Like you're like, oh, okay, this plant has a consciousness. I get it now. And every plant has that. It just may not always be so obvious. So he said, back when the world was just a hot rock, you know, eventually the conditions started to create water over millions of years. And then our planet became a watery world. When our planet was a watery world, the very first life form that sprung into existence somehow was single cell algae. And that single cell algae we now call Chlorella and Spirulina. It is the most basic form of life, but the first form of life. And those very basic, beautiful single cell algae started creating our atmosphere and are responsible for creating the atmosphere that led to the rest of life evolving on this planet. So he said, you know, it's easy to recognize grandmother ayahuasca and grandfather peyote, but the first grandmother plant spirit on this planet is Chlorella and Spirulina. And so you say that we humans are using the plants to heal and create healing, but I say that these ancient grandmother plants are using us to do their healing.
Wow. That's pretty epic.
Yeah, I sort of just like, you know, I was like, wow, that is a total perspective shift. And that was part of when I realized, like, you know, this Purium thing is not just some company. You know, it is a company and you can make money by being a distributor. And that's what I do. And I help other people do it. And if anyone out there is listening and wants to create extra income, like, I can help you do that by sharing healing solutions with your community. But it is not just that. This is a movement. It's a community of people who are gathering around the altar of Gaia in order to help be a part of this journey of these incredible plant intelligences who are doing the healing work on our bodies, which then leads to the healing of our emotions and our spirits, which then leads to us, you know, doing everything we've been talking about, being more kinder people and participating in climate solutions and helping to end factory farming. And it just, like, you see it all the way from a single cell algae all the way to the healing of our planet within this one container that we call Purium. And so that story I heard that story now almost 6 years ago, and it made a profound effect on me. And it's a joy to share it with you all here today.
Love that. I love that. I never heard that. And it's like kind of like the bacteria in our gut that starts controlling us. It's like, okay, let's use these guys to set things right on the planet. It's really interesting. It truly is all benefiting one another back and forth.
The microbiome of our gut also, I think, is a metaphor for our culture. You know, we are we are the microbiome of Gaia, of Earth, right? All of the people and all of we're all the little bacteria that are moving around. Gaia is talking to her celestial neighbors and is like, I just learned that I have like this whole like bacteria system of all these creatures. Isn't it weird to think that I'm made up of all of these little creatures? Right? And so
who'da thunk?
So when we do the work of balancing our microbiome, we are then also doing the micro to macrocosmic work of balancing the microbiome of this entire planet.
Yep. It is truly just all fractals around here, isn't it?
So let's let that fractals. I love it. So I guess let's come back around to an invitation. So to you, dear listener, who is receiving these words right now, thank you for your time and attention. We know that your time is the most valuable resource that you have. We would like to invite you to participate in a journey with us, in a journey of coming into more harmony with your gut microbiome, with saturating your body with living greens and amino acids, and just up leveling your health, which then affects, of course, as we've been speaking of, your auric integrity and your energetic boundaries and your gift. You're offering your gift and your genius to the world. So if this sounds good to you, I'd encourage you to check out juicycleansecollective.com. It's basically a program where we're all going to be using the Purium products, so the Ultimate Lifestyle Transformation as well as the Core 4, either one. And then, so you're going to be ordering that. When you order that, you're going to use the code POSITIVEHEAD at checkout, which is going to get you 25% off. You can also go to positivehead.com/transformation, and there's a link right there to buy it. But then in addition to that, there's an additional sliding scale of $66 to $111 for the accompanying program, accompanying the products. We have over 15 guides, Brandon being one of them, myself being one of them, who are giving our offering. So you're going to be able to participate in sound healing, in gene keys, in astrology, and manifestation techniques, in yoga. And that's on a sliding scale. You can just buy the products and do the cleanse. That's totally fine. You can totally do that. But if you'd like to, we're inviting you to come into this program with us. We also do have a few scholarships available. So there's information about that on the site. But we're going to be doing this for all of June. And I know a lot of us, this is an aspect we haven't even touched on yet. A lot of us are really feeling the gaping space in our lives that community, that in-person community once filled. And a lot of us have felt some level of disconnection during this time in our world, and hopefully things are changing. But what I want to offer you is that this virtual space we're creating is a space for community. So if you're feeling isolated at all or feeling a lack of community, this is a great way to be in touch with us, and we're going to have live calls as well, and a group space and a Mighty Networks atmosphere, which is a different kind of social app for us to use. So we invite you to join us for June. If you want to do this, then you need to place your order and get registered by the end of May. If it's just past the end of May, still get a hold of us. Maybe we can work something out, but try and, get in by the end of May. And if you have any questions or you'd like to talk personally with me, I invite you to contact me. I'm at Robin Tala on Instagram or robintala.com. And Brandon will put links in the show notes for all of the things I'm talking about. So I just wanted to come back around by saying that when we nourish our bodies, it sets the framework and the groundwork and the foundation for everything else to flourish. And I know all of you spiritual explorers out there are interested in up-leveling in any way you can. And I will say that as someone who was quite disconnected from my body for a long time, and very much in my head and my heart, having grown up on a spiritual path myself, when I really dropped into nourishing and nurturing my body, it brought my spiritual evolution to a whole new blossoming, a whole beautiful new level. And so I'm definitely an advocate and a supporter for anyone who wants to do that. And I invite you to come along with us.
Beautifully said. Yeah. Thinking back to the 3 years or so ago when we did a group cleanse with a bunch of Positive Head listeners, how much, this with, you guys have just definitely up-leveled it this time with all the extra facilitation and support. And it's so holistic now. It's, that was a great way to start on the journey all those years ago. And like I said, there's never been anything I've ever stuck with more than this, whatever I've ever, weightlifting, running, a particular diet, particular food. It is a testament to how good it all is, because like I said, I literally crave it if I ever miss a day. And so it's, I just love to see the continued expansion and growth, and just super, super glad to connect with you on here yet again. Once again, guys, you can check out the show notes to go find out more on the various websites, and use the code POSITIVEHEAD to get your discount. I guess as we wind down, Tala, is there anything that you haven't shared that you would like to share before we go?
Sure. Yeah. I'd love to offer a poem, actually.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Please.
I wrote this poem actually in a really special place. It's called Green Lake on the Big Island of Hawaii, and uh, it is now covered in lava after the recent eruption in the last few years. But before the lava covered it, it was the deepest lake. It's a small pond. It just looks like a small pond with just some plants on top, but they never found the bottom of it. It's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on this island, but they sent drones thousands and thousands of feet down freshwater and could never find the bottom. It connected into the middle of the earth. Yeah, I mean, now it is covered in lava, unfortunately. But before that happened, it had never been discovered. They couldn't find the bottom. It went all the way to the center of the earth. And so I visited this sacred place, Green Lake. They have festivals there, or they used to have festivals there. And I sat at sunset and I opened myself to spirit, and these words came through me. So I offer them to you now. I've written to all of them, but I've never written to you. Perhaps because the depth of your love is unfathomable, unmeasurable, and distinct in its overflowing generosity. Your lush, wild abundance, your fierce foundation of a limitless love. I've spun songlines of sultry sensation inspired by succulent sweet hearts, each an embodied emanation of your exquisite existence, but I've never specifically written to you. Grandmother goddess, doe-eyed woman of water and hearth. Mama Nature Gaia, Pachamama, Baba Yaga, giver of life, sower of seeds, green and gray and blue and brown. Touch my hands as I bow down and place my head to your rich, dark fertility, your deep, cool fluidity, spiraling, stretching, ever blessing, mouth to breast, your everything. And so I sing the song of gratitude for all the days that you've held me, kept me full fed and healthy, cradled my sleep-soaked tears that I weep, and whisper to me ancient melodies. I want to say thank you for your rich autumn leaves and your rolling green hills, your sap and your seeds, your fins and your gills, your moon as it bleeds when we weep and we kill, and your sunlight to see the expanse of your will. You are everything. From the coast to the mountains, the rivers and fountains, the tiniest bugs to the puma's great pounces, the spider's whisper, the dolphin's silver, the eagle's call, and the baby's quiver. You are everything. You are my everything. So if I ever bring my life's reckoning, heart beckoning, and anything I can give, every stand take and live for your big and bountiful being. And now I'm seeing that I could have written sooner, but to be truthful, it was ever and always my depths and my follies to answer the calling to you.
Woo! Beautiful, beautiful, man. You're so inspired by your wordsmithing. And not only are you so powerful and poignant, stringing these words together, but just the message behind it and how heartfelt it is. And yeah, more of that. Keep it going, man.
I definitely will. Thank you so much for having me on today, Brandon. And thank you for the work that you so beautifully and gracefully and tirelessly do to provide this uplifting content to so many people out there, connecting us together across the ethers. I really see you and your heart, and I honor you and your offering, and I love you.
Oh, I love you too, my friend. And I look forward to seeing you again in 3D sometime soon. Maybe I can make it to Hawaii to visit at some point in the near future.
Please come out. Please come and visit. I'd love to see you sometime soon. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.
Thank you all for tuning in. As always, love you so, so much. Also, before we sign off, I wanted to remind you to download the Golden Key audio or ebook as my free gift to you at goldenkey.gift using the Golden Key code POSITIVEHEAD. And please, if you enjoy my gift, leave a positive review on Amazon so others can find the book and unlock their lives with the help of the Golden Key as well.